Welcome back to the podcast that's totally being recorded on a different day than the one recorded the last one. You can tell because we're wearing different outfits.
Right.
And it's my birthday.
Yeah.
There you go.
What are the odds?
Which means we're recording in October, which I guess the bit doesn't make sense anymore. So I'm just gonna...
I don't know if it ever did, but it's worth it.
This thing is so itchy. All right, so we teased the AI stuff in the last episode, and we just immediately wanted to get into it because it's something that we're talking a lot about right now, and we're seeing a lot across the board. So something that we're going to talk about in the next 15 minutes is, out of all of the pretty much 1,000 event organizers that we work with, 20,000 events over the last 12 months and growing, what are some of the use cases we're seeing people use AI for effectively for event promotion, which is like this sub niche of a sub niche that we get to like nerd out about. So right. If you're in that, then lucky you. We're like the only people on the internet nerding out about this.
It's probably why you're listening to the podcast.
Yeah. And if you like it, you should send it to other people that also care about this stuff.
Ooh, look at that.
Yeah,
that's why he's the marketing guy.
And recommend some people that we should have on the show. And maybe if you want to be on the show, let us know.
Hit that bell and subscribe.
If you're on YouTube. All right, so AI in event promotion. Some of the things we teased in the last episode that we've been seeing people do is, I think, some of the obvious stuff, right? Like writing an event description. You can do that in Eventbrite now. Pretty much every ticketing software has that little button that says like generate this event description with AI, which I do think is cool, by the way. Like I use it for my own things to get a rough draft. It's like not very good because it's basically taking the first prompt that ChatGPT or OpenAI gives them back in their API, and it's just saying, here you go.
Yep. And it can also hallucinate stuff.
Oh, so much.
Where you're like, oh, it's this bluegrass festival, and then it's like, yeah, featuring Johnny Cash, or just like something wild. So you do have to definitely make sure that you reread what you're given back from it.
Yeah, which is true across the board with AI regardless. But we have seen some ways, and just from using AI ourselves, some ways that you can kind of mitigate some of those hallucinations or get it to be more specific to your specific events.
Yep.
I think one thing that I tossed out there right at the end was like, you write the event description. You want to feed it something, right? Like, let's say we're using ChatGPT as a tool, which you can use the free version of ChatGPT for this, and it does a pretty good job. If you pay for it, they have a little bit. You can get the higher models, and the results will be a little bit better. But honestly, like ChatGPT 3.5 is pretty good still at writing.
Yeah.
You just have to feed it the right stuff. So some of the stuff you might want to feed it is, if you have some bands, can you give it a bio already from those bands,
right,
and allow it to kind of spice that up or just reformat that to fit your event?
Yep.
Can you tell it
information about the venue? I've done that before for customers when they've asked for help, where have fed that into it, where just grab the about section straight from their Facebook or their website, and did a great job weaving that into the event description intelligently.
I think that's something a lot of people miss actually in event descriptions in general, is information about the venue. Because people, when they're reading this event, they want to know, they want to get an idea. You want to paint a picture for them of like what they're going to experience at the event. And when you just say doors at 7, tickets $15,
right?
Like what do I get out of that as like, if I'm already interested in that band, then I'll probably buy that ticket, but you're not helping me make that decision at all. Every little piece of detail on there that you can make it, obviously without writing a novel, but like just paint the picture of what it's like to attend one of those events in your space.
Right.
And if you have a cool space, then like you should really highlight that in the description.
Yes. Especially on the places where we've seen it be put into place, where we're not talking about like an email that you're sending out to your existing subscribers or people that have gone to your events before. We're talking about on your Facebook or through Vesta or on a social media post, something where hopefully it's going to get out there and hit those net new audiences where, they're either not familiar with the band, and so you have to tell them that it's bluegrass or a Grateful Dead tribute or something that they can glean onto to be like, yes, this is my thing to go to, or that venue sounds really cool. I've never been to that part of Austin or that part of Memphis, but that's an outdoor venue that sounds beautiful and a place that I really want to go to.
Yeah.
And it drives them to your destination.
Like the Grove at Germantown Performing Arts Center. Just want to shout them out. They have a cool venue.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing but unless you have it in the picture, which, this is a whole different conversation where I understand why the posters are so popular, why that's something that's really stuck around in the industry, but for the digital promotion, I think that actually hurts instead of helps, which is, yeah, we can get into that a different time, or maybe when we get into the generative images part of AI. But if you're not showing it in the images of what your venue is, why it's an experience for them to go to, you're not putting it in the description, then, you know, if someone's just scrolling through their feed or scrolling through one of the community calendars that we have your event listed on, they're not going to know why they should pick you over the other one. And they're just going to scroll past your event to the other one, unless it's you help stick it in their mind.
And how do you think how can people use AI to help with that?
I think they can do that where it allows you to still take the same bulk information that you'd put together before, but reword it and put it so that not every single description reads the exact same. Because one of the key tricks that I know I've used when using AI for marketing purposes is that you can ask it to regenerate that or do it with like a slightly different twist where, you know, you give it a couple key things. Like an example prompt could be like, write a description for, you know, Joe's band that's playing at our venue tonight. Here's the information about the band. Here's the information about the event. Here's the information about the venue. Just all as one super long piece of text that you put into the OpenAI or Claude prompt or whatever. And from there, once it creates it, you could say, that's too long. Can you shorten it up? Or, you know, that sounds a little too formal. Could you make it a little bit more fun or a little bit more edgy or exciting or something? And it'll reformat it in those ways. So even if you really like what it gives you the first time, you know, if say you're working on your calendar of events for the entire month that you want to get out there and promote it, and if someone looks at all of them together, you don't want it to seem the exact same. You can just use those regenerations or those secondary add-on prompts so that each of those event descriptions feels very custom and unique.
I think that's an interesting angle on it of like, you have a recurring event or an event series that's like very similar, but not the same event every single week.
Right.
Using that to just make it feel unique.
Yes.
Every time and saving. I think the big thing is with AI is like, you could write that yourself. You could have an intern write that themselves.
Right.
But this is the world we're in now as AI is helping us. It acts. I don't think it does our jobs for us. I haven't found a use case where it just does my job for me, but it helps act as an assistant. It's the co-pilot, right? In every aspect of the word. So why not?
Not a sponsor.
Microsoft Copilot's a coding AI, but for people that aren't in that space. But it acts like that. It feels like that when you're using it, where it's like something that used to take me an hour now takes me 5 minutes.
Right.
Which is when you extrapolate that across someone's whole job. If you extrapolate that across your intern's whole job, imagine how much more work that intern can get done in that same amount of time if you empower them with AI tools and automation tools to get their job done. Right. They're going to feel better about themselves and probably stick around longer because they're not doing all this like incredibly tedious, boring work.
Right.
But they also get to be creative and they get to use the cutting edge tools that they're going to use for the rest of their careers. And honestly, they're probably going to be the ones that end up helping you in your organization get to the point where you're really savvy with this stuff because they're the people that have the most to gain from learning these tools.
Right. And quite frankly, they might be using it anyways, even if they're not telling you that. And then just, you know, sitting around. So the question is, do you want them to get it done in 5 minutes to about the same level of quality, or do you want them to spend an hour doing it, you know, by hand, you know, when they can move on to another super important task that you need to get done, or just something on that never-ending to-do list that needs to get crossed off. Yeah. And you've talked about this a lot too, using it for marketing for Vesta and other purposes, where the other really nice part about it is that not only does it not do your job for you, but sometimes it can just get you through that creative writer's block where you're like, I know I need to get something posted. I know I need to get something done. But like, I just don't even know where to start with this topic. And it just gives you something. It's definitely not just like copy and paste it exactly as is, but at least gets you started. And sometimes when you're in that frame of mind, it's easier to edit something that's already there versus have to write it all from scratch. Yeah. I think that's across the board with AI. Like you almost never want to just take exactly what it writes and then copy and paste that into your, like in your social media, into your event listings or whatever. You always at least want to look at it, and you're probably going to need to tweak it a little bit, but it gets you past that writer's block and it gets you to that rough draft. And often it'll like surface details that you take for granted because it's your events and you know about it. And I'll often, so to get really into the weeds on like the event details part is like something that I'll use it for is I'll give it my event details, even if I wrote them myself, and I'll say, what am I missing on here? Like what would an attendee that reads this not like have information on? So for example, with the event that I just did at Dry Spokes in Omaha, I did that. And one of the things that it pointed out, it was like, you didn't say anything about the accessibility, the handicap accessibility.
And it turns out that I had 3 different people that came to the event that ended up asking questions about the handicap accessibility. And if I hadn't given that to ChatGPT, it would have slipped my mind to not really think about that. And I wouldn't have asked the venue for those details, so that then I could have added that in the description. And those 3 people wouldn't have showed up to the event and had a great time. Like,
and especially because it's a very accessible venue with it being all one floor and
yeah,
other things like that. Where
so it's a strength that I didn't think to highlight.
Right. Yeah. No, that's super interesting. I was gonna say on that note, since I feel like you've used it a lot, both in our marketing, but also for your own events, what are 2 other pro tips that you think a lot of people take for granted? I know last time you had teased on saying, like, overall, what could you do, or like, how would you frame it for X city, whatever city you're in? But like, what are some other pro tips that you'd recommend people to?
Well, I think that's one, is like just taking whatever your event description is and telling ChatGPT what your audience is. So if your audience is the Omaha like arts scene, or your audience is Omaha tech founders, or your audience is Des Moines punk scene, like whatever, like put that in and give it a sentence or 2 describing that audience. Say, our audience is this. Rewrite this description to aim towards that audience, or what am I missing in this description for that audience? And it'll give you either what you're missing, or it'll rewrite it in a way that is specific for that audience. So I think that's really cool for anyone that's doing stuff in a community. And again, like, it doesn't have to be the final draft, but it allows you to get to this point of like, oh, those are things I hadn't thought of. As we're saying this, I'm like, that it would be incredibly powerful for a tour. Right. If you have the same show that you're going to multiple different cities, can it remember that Bright Eyes played in Chicago? Last time they played there was 15 years ago. Like, sometimes it'll surface random stuff like that, which you should verify, because sometimes it'll just make stuff up. But it's doing that less and less every day. Like, they're getting a lot better at solving for those hallucinations. And a hallucination in AI is just, it makes something up that isn't true, because it's trying to like kind of come up with something that sounds true, which is really the job that it's been given. And we're trying to now reel it back and tell it to be more accurate, which you can do that too in your prompt, is just ask it, be accurate, prioritize accuracy. You can give different tweaks like that to try to get it to be more specific. One other thing that I'd say that helps me in just prompting in general, which across the board, no matter what I'm using it for, is I put the first prompt in that might say, like, here's what I have for this event description so far. Tell me what I might be missing if my audience is this. That's going to get you a long way. But then if at the end of the prompt, you say, ask me 2 to 3 questions that will help you answer this prompt better, that I can give you details and it will help you answer this prompt better. And the AI will give you back the details that you didn't give it in that first prompt to give it its best answer. And it is insane. And pretty much you'll start to learn what those things are, and you won't have to do that every time eventually for the same type of prompt. But it starts to make you realize, it starts to help you, teach you how to write better prompts. And it's incredible how much better the responses that you get are from one of these AI chat bots. When you start to ask it those kind of questions, because it knows what it needs from you to give the best response. And often if you don't give it to it, it won't ask you for that clarification. It'll just guess. And that's where you get the weird hallucinations. So if you ask it for that clarification first, it'll tell you the things you've missed, and then you can give it those details, and then it'll give you a much more detailed and specific response.
Which, along those lines, one of the things that I've used that I've found helpful is when writing a description of something, whether it's the event or something else, I've asked it to give me, if I wanted to generate an image for that using an AI, what would the prompt be to create that image? And then it'll create that for you. And then I'll either put that into a different chat with the same system, or put it into a different program altogether. And that helps shortcut a lot of that to get it, to your point, to that like correct prompt.
Oh no, we lost our light. That's it. That's the episode.
That's our sign.
That really was the pretty much the end of the time. So I think we kind of really went into the weeds on like event descriptions here. So that's really what this episode is about, is the event descriptions supported by AI. And then maybe in some future episodes, we can go into, I think we could just dive right into the computer and actually show some stuff about images. I think it would be better to be visual in that anyway. So
and also, subtle plug, if you're interested in AI, there are some pieces that we're working on. So get in touch with us. Email podcast@eventvesta.com, and we'd love to talk to you more in depth about AI.
We got some, you can be an alpha tester or a beta tester.
Yes.
An early tester of some of the stuff we're building. So that's really exciting.
Yes. Cool. Well, thanks for taking the time, Craig. This was fun.
Yeah, of course.
And can't wait to see you again on your birthday.
Yeah. Happy birthday.